Now, something I've seen quite a few people saying ever since that first season of Andor came out last year is that they can't quite look at Star Wars or the other content we've gotten lately or since, like, for example, the third season of The Mandalorian and the Ahsoka series that kicked off last week, that they can't quite look at them the same way anymore, that the level of writing in that series in Andor was just so much better in comparison and everything else feels lesser. Along with this, or along the same lines, I've also seen some others who didn't like Andor or are kind of angry at it for a variety of reasons, among them being, I guess you could say, it changed the opinions or expectations of some on what Star Wars could potentially be, or maybe even what it should be. I've literally had, no joke here, I've had someone say to me recently that Andor was written too well for Star Wars, that we shouldn't always expect that level of quality from it. Which immediately reminded me of what's going on with the game Baldur's Gate 3 right now, where we have this game that is, from all I've heard anyway, I haven't played it yet, I'm waiting for the PS5 version. But anyway, we have this game that is quite impressive and expansive, shall we say. So much so that some devs from AAA game studios are sort of making excuses as to why it was so good and why their games aren't so good. They're essentially saying that it's not something that should now become anything remotely close to a new standard, that gamers can't always expect that. Which kind of comes off like them saying or having this attitude of, you should expect and pay for the best we're willing to give you. Not the best that we're capable of or that's possible, considering, of course, the manpower and resources some of these AAA studios have. And don't get me wrong, I don't think every single game that comes out needs to be the next or on par with Baldur's Gate 3, assuming it is indeed as good as I've heard. Nor do I think that virtually anyone was actually expecting every single game henceforth to suddenly be on that same level. Just like I don't think every Star Wars fan suddenly expected every show or film that comes out from now on to be or push the envelope quite like Andor did. Nevertheless, when you see what level of quality is possible when the effort is put forth, it really does make you think, doesn't it? You kind of wonder, couldn't more games be a little closer to this? Or couldn't more Star Wars shows be a little closer to Andor's level of writing or just overall quality? And not so much the Book of Boba Fett, for example? Are we really getting their best efforts? Or are we instead getting what they think is simply enough to sell? Just what is their intent when creating these things? And this was something I was talking a bit about in my video the other day, where I said that what I appreciated about Dave Filoni is that I believe his main intent or priority, what he's setting out to do first and foremost, is to create great Star Wars. But obviously, the best of intentions doesn't always lead to the best of results, and there was, I must admit, a great response left in the comments of that video from Sean Murphy, who said, "It's the mediocrity. I don't care who is running the show, all I care about are the results. And when did not great but not bad come to be acceptable for Star Wars?" And that last part in particular, I think, is a great point. And I've spoken before about how one of the problems with being the type of fan that just accepts and professes to love absolutely everything Star Wars just because it's Star Wars, and also because there's this false belief out there that criticizing it automatically makes you a toxic fan, that all criticism somehow equates to being hateful. But anyway, one of the main problems is when they, in this case Disney and Lucasfilm, when they see you're thrilled with mediocrity and you gobble it up and eagerly ask for more with your wallet in hand, you're only encouraging to give you the bare minimum over and over again to see what's the least they can get away with and still be able to sell. And for whatever reason, probably to some degree or mainly because of the subjective nature of art coupled with wanting to love something like Star Wars or whatever else it might be, like I was talking about before. But for whatever reason, entertainment is one of those areas or businesses where oftentimes people will just settle for less than the best and be content if not happy with it just because. They'll happily take not bad but not great with few complaints, if any. And as I've mentioned before, when I've criticized Star Wars, I've had people, lots of people over the years, they tell me that I should just be happy and even grateful to get Star Wars at all, even if it's not the greatest. Somehow they're not remembering or caring, I guess, that you do indeed have to pay for Star Wars. Disney Plus is not free. In fact, the price keeps going up and up. And none of this makes any sense whatsoever when you really think about it. I mean, no one ever says after, say, taking their car in to get their brakes fixed that the mechanic did a not great but not a bad job and are content with that and just shrug it off. No one's ever said, I'm grateful that I was able to pay to get a mechanic to at the very least try to fix my brakes, even if they didn't succeed. And again, we can't forget that art is subjective, right? What one person thinks is absolute trash, another person may genuinely love. We don't have something quite as objective to measure art as, well, with a brake job. There we have something as concrete as, did my car slow down and stop when I pushed in the pedal? Still, we can look at something like a streaming show or a video game, and if we're being honest, we can have a discussion about just how good it really is, even if we personally didn't or did enjoy it. We can look at how good it is when compared to something else, to another game or show, for example, especially one in the same genre. There are plenty of movies and shows that I personally didn't enjoy over the years, but can still appreciate or understand why they are regarded as great. And so when it comes to Andor, you can say you personally found it boring or not very Star Wars-like, that it was too grim or too serious, that it was missing some of that fun that you think is usually there with the franchise, which even that I don't know if I agree with, because when I look at something like The Empire Strikes Back, which is widely regarded as the best Star Wars anything ever, well, it was pretty grim and serious, certainly more so than the two films that bookend it in the original trilogy. Then there's Revenge of the Sith, widely regarded as the best of the prequel trilogy films, and that was also on the darker, more serious side of things. Anyway, this idea that some have put out there that Andor has ruined Star Wars somehow because it was too much of this, it was too serious, slow, and grim, or not enough of that, not enough fun and lightsabers, I guess. Or that, as I've heard from some people, that it was too well written and now fans expect that all the time. Well, I can't help but objectively disagree with that. We should always expect Star Wars to be well written. Even when it is aiming to be lighter and a bit more fun, we should still expect quality writing. And yeah, it's absolutely fine if Star Wars still wants to be that from time to time, or even most of the time if it doesn't want to be quite as serious and real and grim as Andor. No one that loved Andor that I've talked to or heard from at least has said that they always want Star Wars to be just like that from now on. They were just happy that we can, or so it seems, we can sometimes get it like that from time to time because they found it highly enjoyable in that form. They don't think it should set the standard going forward in terms of what the substance of the content is or should be like or look like, only that it should set some sort of standard in terms of the effort put forth. Because love or hate Andor, effort and money was put into that series and both very much show. And that was basically the point, or one of them, I was trying to make in that video about Dave Filoni. That Filoni always puts in the effort. His intent is always true, at least I believe. And we have no idea what kind of budget he has or hasn't been given. We have no idea what or who else he has to deal with behind the scenes when making his show. Which is not me trying to excuse any of the flaws with the Ahsoka series thus far. There have been some, despite thinking that, yes, overall it's been pretty good. I was simply trying to say that first and above everything and anything else, you need to have the right intent, I think. You need to want to make a good Star Wars story, or you're never going to succeed. I don't feel like they can be engineered by people who just want to sell Star Wars, if that makes sense. And though something like special effects are great and tend to be expected in or from Star Wars, I don't personally need them. I do not value them anywhere near as much as I value the quality of the story. I say all the time I want substance over spectacle, not that there's anything wrong with spectacle. And I think the Kenobi series is a good example. I wanted a simple story that more or less stayed on Tatooine, and it being cheap, relatively speaking, it would have been just fine because it should have been a character introspective instead of a jaunt around the galaxy. But anyway, to wrap this up, the only way Andor ruined Star Wars is for them. It ruined it for Disney and Lucasfilm because it made even more fans wake up and realize that it's all about the writing and the intent. That there's no reason why Star Wars should be thought of as this franchise that just has poor or cheesy or goofy dialogue, that it's somehow part of the charm or something like that, that it's part of what makes it great, when what's always made Star Wars great are the stories, first and foremost. Well, that's all I got for you this time. Now it's your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about all this. Did Andor ruin Star Wars somehow? Or was it exactly what Star Wars needed? Something to make us realize, even more so, just how bad some of it had been in comparison. Whatever you think, though, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.